Pepe's infamous reputation.
Oh, what the freak?
If you think I'll cross and take my mans out, just kill yourself. In the trenches, 40 on my hip, I had to fix my...
Let's rename that.
Pepe.
Let's
Hard to believe, but did you know that Pepe, no, not that Pepe, this Pepe's real name is Kepler Leveron de Lima Ferreira. For some of you, it might sound a bit familiar. That's because he's actually named after Johannes Kepler, who invented the first powerful telescope and discovered 3 laws of planetary motion, and Charles Louis Alphonse Leveron, a Nobel Prize-winning French physiologist who uncovered the causes of diseases like malaria, because Pepe's parents were actually quite the scholars and loved to read. In fact, when Pepe was born, his father would say, with a name like that, my boy is going to become a scientist. And well, perhaps in a certain way, they weren't wrong, because Pepe would grow up to be a master at physics.
Oh my god!
He was almost like an immovable object.
That nigga just rushed him.
At physics, on the pitch, he was almost like an immovable object, and quickly...
That picture is a crash out picture. This thing is a crash out, bro. This nigga might be a crash out freaking warrior.
He crashed out with Zlatan. He
Bro.
got Zlatan saying, "Hey, chill."
No, for real, that's something different, dude. What the freak? How you got sponsored by Nike in the wrong way? He's doing his Nike symbol trying to kick Johnson in the face and shit, dog. Bro, finna win a street fight.
Became infamous and hated by opposition fans throughout the world as one of, if not the most aggressive and unhinged defenders of all time.
Come on, dude.
Despite growing up with his parents' hopes of making a name for himself in the scientific community and even being named after a Nobel Prize winner, there are a lot of people out there that would rather define him as a Nobel idiot, at times looking like
Are you playing the piano?
Chaos. And
Okay.
I know that people will also say that Sergio Ramos is an equally unhinged and aggressive defender himself. But Pepe, without a doubt, would play a huge part in that as an influence. But by his reputation and look alone, you might have never guessed that Pepe was actually the kind of guy who you can consider as a mama's boy. It might be hard to believe and maybe even highly unusual, but Pepe slept in his parents' bed until he was 17. He grew up with 3 sisters and was incredibly spoiled by his mother, which I'm no psychologist, but is what many suggest attributes to the overly masculine and aggressive defensive display on the pitch. Because Pepe has always been that kind of defender ever since he started his career in Brazil.
He's like a more crash out right there.
Pepe isn't even from
Brazil.
Portugal.
Whoa.
It was Portuguese.
Why is he in Brazil? Cat?
I thought he was Portuguese.
Why is he in Brazil? Why are you traveling around this shit?
8 years old, the only thing that Pepe enjoyed more than bugs was football. And nothing in football made him more angry than losing the ball.
No way!
Words,
Hold on, nigga, you gonna get trash and
more
shit?
angry than losing the ball. In his father's
Boy.
words, he would take the ball off of his opponent's legs without minding the damage it would cause. Outside the pitch, he was a relatively calm boy, but when he laced up his boots, it's like he became a completely different person. Because in a friendly match against Portuguese Premier League side Maritimo, the young Pepe was asked to go easy on the opposing strikers.
Okay, see, alright. If they putting a warning for people, are they giving people warnings and shit? You giving people warnings? I think that's not for the end well, chat. 212 yellow cards. What?
Yeah, damn.
He got 17 red cards and 217 yellow cards. Out your old career, hey nigga, you better do some mental work.
And you guessed it, he didn't. But Maritimo would instead find interest in the aggressive defender and decided to bring him to play in Portugal. And when he arrived in the Premier Liga, the young and unhinged defender would start to make waves. Pepe was a character that the Portuguese league was definitely not used to seeing. A defender who not only intimidated his opposition with his physical presence, but also through sheer ability. His former manager described him saying, "I remember games in which he was the only real center back. He was only a kid, but he was able to lead the defense all on his own. From that point, I never doubted that Pepe would go far. From what was seen as a league that played traditional defense, Pepe's presence would be a breath, or should I say tackle, of fresh air. He was something new and something special. And that's kind of the reason why I'm so glad I switched to Opera as my new main browser. Without a doubt, my absolute or what and tab on different websites. If you think of it, but it wasn't until Pepe moved to a bigger Premier League side in Porto that he would really start to be in the spotlight. Pepe was given the immense task of filling in the defensive presence of their Champions League winning center back, Ricardo Carvalho, who, alongside the club's former manager Jose Mourinho, would be on their way to Chelsea. Despite Porto playing an incredibly offensive 3-4-3 formation, meaning there were really only 3 players in the back line, Pepe was incredibly solid as their main stopper. And as unpopular as his formation was, Pepe's defensive ability was good enough to support Porto to win back-to-back Premier League titles in the 2005-06 and 2006-07 season. And by this time, Pepe was already seen as one of the most technically sound defenders in the world. And that's when Real Madrid and their blank checkbook came calling. For a transfer fee of 30 million euros, Los Blancos would give him a task that was perhaps even more difficult than the one given to him when he joined Porto. He had to help revive a declining defensive presence for Madrid, and was expected to fill the boots of longtime Real Madrid captain and Spanish defensive legend Fernando Hierro, who departed the club a few years ago, yet was still really the last true center back they had. Real Madrid at the time was described as a graveyard for center backs, as many of their defenders around that time were incredibly forgettable. Raul Bravo and Jonathan Woodgate weren't all that notable, and their best center back was Fabio Cannavaro, who was already undersized and was rapidly declining physically after really sacrificing his body for the 2006 World Cup. Even Roberto Carlos and Salgado, who played on the flanks, were on their last legs and already much older, with the only young defensive talent they really had, Marcelo and Sergio Ramos.
No, Marcelo.
Who was still playing.
I thought that was
Robinho. They really had Marcelo and Sergio Ramos, who was still playing as a right back at the time. Pepe even recalls what it was like to play for Madrid in his first year, saying, "We were always one-on-one at the back. I once turned to Fabio Cannavaro and said, 'Fabio, you cover.' And he told me, 'No, it's every man for himself here.'" It's almost a miracle how dysfunctional their defense was, yet Madrid still managed to end the season as champions during Pepe's first year. In fact, during his first El Clasico against Barca, Pepe did such a good job marking Ronaldinho to help Madrid win 1-0 that he would be named the man of the match, with the press.
I mean, to be honest though, that might be the best way to guard that nigga though.
Yeah.
Crashing out on him.
Have to.
Because he's going to embarrass you. You got to embarrass him before he embarrasses you.
Facts.
Because Ronaldinho's going to chop some shit. We all know that.
And saying, "Well done, you changed your life today." And former Real Madrid player Miguel Torres would say, "It was hard for any player who came in to reach Fernando Hierro's level. But I thought Pepe was one of the best signings."
Do y'all know any good ad blocker?
To prove that the club had got it right. Objectively speaking, Pepe was an incredibly good defender. But since April 21, 2009, many people would mostly ignore his ability on the pitch and instead see Pepe in a much different light when he infamously kicked Getafe defender Javier Cosquero multiple times and proceeded to punch another. Sure, Pepe had his aggressive fire, but nothing was as high profile as that. It was almost like Pepe reached a whole nother level of aggression. After the match, he would go on to apologize for his actions, saying, "I've seen the replays and I don't even recognize myself. I don't have the words to describe how I feel. The biggest punishment that I could receive is what I'm feeling now." And Real Madrid would require him to do some anger management counseling, as Pepe would be hit with a 10-match ban. But that was far from the end of Pepe's infamous reputation.
Oh, what the freak? He grabbed his face and then kicked him? Bro, this dude's doing UFC kicks. Bro, really trying to be MMA.
Especially during his time with Madrid, would only continue to garner hatred everywhere from opposition fans. The time he stepped on Messi's foot, a large portfolio of highly aggressive fouls, and generally causing fear from opponents for their safety anytime he was near them, with many other La Liga players admitting they never wanted to be near him. And throughout the years, well, his public image never really recovered. Prime buzzcut Pepe was truly a menace on the pitch, and despite being an absolute warrior who fought till the last second, with an unwavering work rate and world-class defensive ability, when most people look back at his career, they only see Pepe as an out-of-control and raging footballer. Because of his reputation, many seem to forget his importance to both Real Madrid winning their first few Champions League titles in the 2010s and helping Portugal win their only international trophy in history as the 2016 Euros final man of the match. But in Pepe's eyes, his on-pitch playstyle is nothing he should be apologizing for. As he said, "When I go in for a challenge, I don't wait for my opponents. My objective is to win the ball. If my opponent makes contact with me, that's not my problem." Throughout his 10 seasons with Real Madrid, Pepe would win 3 La Liga titles, 2 Copa del Reys, and 3 Champions League titles. But after his days at Real Madrid, Pepe would largely be out of the spotlight. But Sergio Ramos would definitely take the baton and continue to carry out that unhinged legacy. And despite being older and no longer playing for the world's most high-profile club, Pepe would still continue to be a quality defender. Funnily enough, he did get a little less unhinged.
He was just formal and shit. Nigga like a crash out now. He was just all looking formal and shit now, bruh. He like he could get to a job interview. But right here, this nigga like he's not getting the job. Like he's not getting the job interview. No. He's not probably pulling up.
He crashing out.
Yeah, for real, bro. Like, oh,
shit. A little less unhinged, but of course, at times bring out that inner menace. But the reason why he's still able to play at one of the highest levels, even up until today, is because outside the pitch, Pepe is one of the most hardworking and disciplined footballers of the game, still keeping an insanely healthy diet and exercise routine that would help him continue to play for Porto and Portugal well into the age of 40. But for these last couple of years, Pepe has kind of actually slightly turned his reputation around. The only problem is not a lot of people actually realized it, and it just goes to highlight how his defensive ability was really overlooked and undermined just because of his past mistakes and overly aggressive moments. But yes, that definitely is due to his personal decisions. But if nothing else, in Pepe's career, especially in his prime, you either absolutely hated him or love and respected his warrior-like attitude on the pitch. I actually asked a poll to see who was the bigger menace between him and Ramos. And well, at the very least, a lot of people are saying that Pepe's fouls were out in the open and not hidden. Therefore, he was just aggressive and not really dirty, while a lot of Sergio Ramos's most infamous moments kinda were. Now nearing 42 years old, Pepe is close to the end of his career, but he certainly will always be a player that for many, for better or for worse, will never forget.
No, I don't care. I mean, if you need somebody to crash out on your team that's like play defense too, because I feel like he could play defense good, but it was like, bruh, it was probably because he was just like didn't know how to control the shit. So he probably was just ready to crash out any moment. That's why you said he probably couldn't recognize this stuff or some shit. He probably needed more freaking discipline on the pitch or some shit. Cause that nigga like he needed freaking what's the card? He needed freaking like a therapist or some shit.
Heard you want to talk to the mob. Heard that you trying to get involved with it. Heard that you trying to come